When your family's history is as steeped in colonialism as mine is, the journey towards reconciliation feels daunting. This is part 3 in a series of videos I am making about my journey towards becoming an ally to the Indigenous community here in Canada. But the road has not been easy, and as you've learned so far, my family history is complicated, to say the least. I left off telling you that I felt immobilized for about 10 years from the guilt and shame of what my family has done to Indigenous people in Canada. So how did I move forward? How did I come out of that? Well, I came out of it one step at a time. And I came out of it taking it one day at a time. One day at a time is a common expression in the addiction recovery world. But as someone with 3.5 years of sobriety, I am learning that one day at a time applies to so much more than addiction. In fact, the 12 steps applies to more than just addiction too. As I look back on how I emerged from amidst this crippling guilt and shame, I can see the essence of the 12 steps woven throughout the journey. When I reflect on the 12 steps, I kind of break them up into 4 chunks. The first 3 steps help you look past yourself to something greater, something bigger that can achieve something that you're powerless over. The second chunk, steps 4 through 7, is where you look within yourself and you do your inner work and you figure it out. And then steps 8 through 10, you're looking at those around you, those you have wronged, those you might need to make it right with. That's the reconciliation work. And then steps 11 and 12 are about leaving it better than you found it and doing the inner work continually and helping those around you. Step 1 is the part where we sober up. It's the part where we realize we've been numbing out and we've been in denial of the problems. When I began to understand the sheer gravity of the generational issues going on, I felt completely powerless and helpless. The issues are so systemic, and the sheer volume and magnitude of the healing required leaves me feeling empty-handed. But that couldn't be it. It couldn't just be hopeless and helpless. There has to be a way, right? I spent a couple years at step 1 thinking it was just helpless and hopeless. And then eventually I came to believe that there's a power greater than us that can help restore us to sanity. And those are the powers of grace and forgiveness. I took that first step into hope on Canada's quote-unquote 150th birthday. I was so puzzled when people were saying Canada was 150 years old, because I was thinking, isn't Canada thousands and thousands of years old with a rich Indigenous history? This was the first time I was ashamed to wear the Canadian flag. That Canada Day, I decided to write a letter of reconciliation. It was about 6 pages long, handwritten, and when I got to the Forks for the powwow, I sought out someone who looked like maybe they might be an elder. When I handed him my letter, he opened it, read the first line, and then folded it back up and proceeded to say, "Oh wow, this letter is not meant for me, it's meant for my ancestors. When you go home today, build a fire, offer this letter in the fire, burn it up, and the smoke will rise up to my ancestors, and they will read your letter, and then you'll have peace." This was tough for me to hear. In hindsight, I hadn't really written the letter for their healing. I had written it for me to be seen. I wasn't even considering the possibility that my letter might traumatize someone over again. At the time, this didn't really line up with my spiritual values. I would have seen burning this letter and offering it up to their ancestors as some kind of other religious practice that didn't fit my Christian worldview. But I heard a voice whisper to me ever so quietly, as if it was coming from within me. Isn't this the mindset of how it all started, Krista? Didn't this all begin with people who said, my way is right, your way is wrong, I will not do it your way, you must do it my way? Oh, Lord, have mercy on my colonial heart. After hearing that voice, I did go home, and I did build a fire, and I burned the letter in the fire. And wouldn't you know it, I felt peace. In fact, I felt it so tangibly on behalf of my grandmother that I had made her amends. I also received a gift from those ancestors. That is an open mind. I began to recognize the God that I knew in Indigenous people, in Jewish people, in Buddhist people, even in Muslim people. I began to realize that God the Creator is the same as Creator God. And so I did. I came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could truly restore us and do the reconciliation work. Upon that realization, I did make a decision to turn my will and decisions around reconciliation over to the care of God, as I was now learning to understand Him. Next comes the searching and fearless moral inventory. But in this case, it's not just of myself, it's of my family, it is of my nation. What have I, plural, as a society, as a family, done to wrong the Indigenous people? I had to own what my grandmother had done as a dorm parent at a residential school. I had to own that what my aunt and uncle did in fostering children in the 60s was wrong. And I had to own my own role that I played as a child welfare welfare worker in the Point Douglas unit in Winnipeg. But don't panic, because at this point, all I'm doing with this information is surrendering it to that higher power, to this God of grace and love and forgiveness. Here's where things get real, though. Step 6, we have to be entirely ready to have God remove the defects of character. We have to actually want to change and be different. Enter unsettling. Unsettling is understanding which parts of your lenses and worldview are built on a colonial mindset and learning how to do away with those things. And as the name implies, it's a bit of an unsettling process. If you're uncomfortable, you're probably doing it right. I did begin to unsettle myself. In fact, I started making mistakes. I offended Indigenous friends because I expected them to defend their positions when it was really my job to educate myself. I've purchased Indigenous-looking stuff that was probably made in China. I've had conversations with people that I thought were helpful when really I was just re-traumatizing them for my own healing. Unsettling involves recognizing my own negative behaviors and actually being willing to change them. But this can sometimes feel impossible, which is why we need step 7, to humbly ask that higher power to help us remove our shortcomings. It is only after we have done all of this inner work, this intrinsic work, that we should be reaching out a hand to others in reconciliation. Until we've found that higher power, until we've asked it for forgiveness and asked it to help us learn to forgive ourselves, how are we going to be able to look at others without just dumping our own damage on them? But we do it anyway, don't we? Because like I said in my process, I hurt people, which is where we get to step 8. Ooh, making that list of people we have wronged is a doozy. And truth be told, I haven't sat down and made a physical list, but I have learned to be quick to apologize with a humble and sincere and contrite heart. A true apology expects nothing in return. Some of those I've wronged have not forgiven me, but I have been able to forgive myself. But even after making these amends, I continue to live life, I continue to take steps forward, and I continue to make mistakes. That's why we need step 10, where we continue to take a personal inventory, and when we're wrong, we promptly admit it. I keep making mistakes, but like I said, that higher power in truth and reconciliation is the power of love and grace and forgiveness. The only way I can move forward is to believe in that power. If I want to move forward, I'm going to have to take steps, and if I'm gonna take steps, I'm gonna take some wrong steps. So I need to be okay with being humble and admitting when I'm wrong. Step 11 is kind of abstract because we're seeking to improve our conscious contact with God as we understand Him. I think this can be safely accomplished by recognizing the many ways that we are more the same than we are different. But the second half of step 11 is really important here, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. Whose will am I going to talk about with truth and reconciliation? Obviously God's will for grace and forgiveness, but I think more importantly what I have learned when it comes to reconciliation is to pray to understand the will of Indigenous people in this healing journey. Here's a classic example from popular culture. It doesn't matter whether I think spirit animals are really cool and I would like to have one. If Indigenous people are telling me that that is cultural appropriation, I need to respect their will in this healing journey. They need to be the ones calling the shots because they are the ones who were wronged. Step 12 is what I'm doing right now, and that is having had this awakening, carrying the message to other colonial people who maybe want to learn how to be an Indigenous ally. Because Lord knows it is a daunting and terrifying journey. So if you need a hand to hold, I am here. Healing does not happen in isolation, and healing happens for a reason. I truly believe that I have healed in this way so that I can help others learn to grow past the denial, past the crippling guilt and shame, so that I can be there to pick someone up when they fall down and make a mistake. I have learned that I don't have to be ashamed of my own culture. I don't have to try and not exist because I have a history. I just need to learn, with humble gratitude, how to walk footsteps of healing and love. It is only out of all of this inner work that I've been able to emerge on the other side with tangible action steps and ways that I live my life in the spirit of reconciliation here in Canada. In the next few videos, I plan to share some tangible examples of ways that I live a lifestyle of reconciliation. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for hearing my story today. And if you have questions, feel free to leave a comment or reach out.